Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Freddy or Not, where my name is Freddy and I am ready to dive into today's topic, which is mythology. We all know the epic tales of Greek and Norse mythology, and yet there's one that's often overlooked, which is Egyptian mythology. But not today, so like and subscribe because today I'm going to do my best to summarize all of Egyptian mythology. Disclaimer though, I'm probably going to butcher all the names. We start at the beginning of everything, when the universe was a big chaotic ocean of primordial water. Then the giant pyramid Benben rose up, and there was a lotus flower with Benben, and when this flower bloomed, we got the sun god Ra, and light came with him. Now in some sources, Ra has parents though somehow, Nath and Kanum, though Nath may also be the cow Nehit Weret. It might also be a metaphorical cow. They aren't too relevant though, and it's debatable whether they're even his parents. Now, Ra created Shu, the god of air, and Tefnet, the goddess of rain. And the universe, though, still wrapped in this primordial waters, was so full of mystery, right? So Shu and Tefnet were like, hey, we want to go check this out. And they just dove right into the waters. But Ra was like, man, these guys have been gone a while. And started getting worried, right, that he would never see them again. So he decided to send his best messenger, his eye. And he just rips out his eye, and it turns into this independent goddess, also known as Wadjet. And he orders her to find them and bring them home. Now eventually the eye returned them safe and sound, and Ra was so happy he cried tears of joy, and it was actually these tears that created humans. Now it's stated that Ra's father Kanum does sculpt babies out of clay and put them in the stomachs of pregnant women though, so reconcile that how you will. But with his new creations, Ra became the first ruler of the universe and Egypt's very first pharaoh. But when Ra's eye returned with the gods, however, the eye goddess discovered Ra had created a new eye in her absence, and out of rage and jealousy, the eye of Ra ran away, leaving the other gods to go retrieve her and escort her back to Egypt. Which is pretty funny, because the eye that retrieved the gods was almost immediately needed to be retrieved by the gods. It's like poetry, it rhymes. And I'd just like to point out, there are first world problems, and then there is, my eye got jealous and ran away. I mean, that's just, wow. Regardless, Ra, as the sun god, would spend his days on his boat traveling across the sky, lighting the whole world. And when nighttime came, he would plunge into the waters and would have to sail through the 12 gates of the underworld, which is why it's dark at night. And crossing each one of those took an hour, so 12 hours of darkness. But before leaving the underworld, he would frequently be attacked by the serpent named Apep. And every day, Apep would get closer. It's a rivalry of the ages, alright? And one time, Apep even ate the sun god. But he was kind of unable to hold him and ended up regurgitating him. See, this is where Bastet comes in. You see, Ra created Bastet, the cat goddess, and Bastet would follow Ra during the day on his journey, and at night she would turn into a cat to protect the world from the serpent named Apep. You might have also heard that Egyptians had like great reverence for cats. That's because cats would protect their food from like rodents and scare off snakes and stuff. Now, eventually Shu and Tefnet had children named Geb, the god of earth, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. Now, Ra expected Nut to be his wife. Why did he expect his granddaughter to be his wife? That's beyond me. But regardless, she fell in love with Geb because, like, yeah, did you see the picture of this dude? If he looked like that, I'm not surprised Ra got mogged by him. That's insane. This guy's like Liver King level steroids. That's crazy. But regardless, Ra, furious at Nut for not choosing him, places a curse on her and declares that she will not give birth to a child in any month or year. Meanwhile, the god Thoth, who was also another child of Ra, spent his days gambling with the moon. And honestly, he was cleaning house, alright? He was kind of running the moon's pockets. And he took his winnings in the form of the moon's light, totaling 1/72nd of the moon's illumination, alright? And altogether, he had accumulated about 5 days, okay? So, the calendar at the time only had 360 days. So when those 5 days of Thoth's winnings were added to the calendar, those 5 days weren't accounted for by Ra's curse. So when those 5 days eventually came around, Nut gave birth to 4 children, Osiris, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. Now Ra was super pissed at this, right? More mad than ever. And he decided to punish Net by forbidding her from ever seeing Geb for the rest of eternity. And their father Shu was responsible for keeping them apart. So Shu would forever hold Nut above Get, which is why the sky is above the earth. Now, Ra would eventually create another daughter, Hathor, the goddess of love. But Ra and Hathor's relationship was a little freaky. You see, there's one legend that states Hathor would lift the spirits of an unhappy Ra by, quote, revealing her intimate parts and dancing before him.
Hey,
yo, no freaky, ain't that his kid? But that's how she became the patron of music and dance. It's also said that Hathor would nurture the souls of the deceased by offering them food. And you're probably thinking, how nice of her. Nah, bruh, because Hathor's a freak. The way she would offer them food is by turning into a cow and having them suck on her udders. Yeah. So anyway, years later, the humans were plotting to overthrow Ra, because at this point, he's grown old, right? And they thought he could no longer manage the affairs of the world. But when Ra heard of this scheme, he called the other gods to counsel him, and he's like, hey, yo, guys, they're trying to overthrow me, what should I do? And Nun, who's the personification of the primordial waters, by the way, he just says, smite the humans. And Ra is just like, hell yeah. So, you remember how the Eye of Ra was an independent goddess? Like the one that found the kids in the ocean? Yeah, well, the Eye of Ra can also technically possess other goddesses and force them to carry out Ra's will. So, Hathor, the goddess of love, was assigned to carry out Ra's will and destroy humanity. So then she's released on the world, and she kills thousands. Blood is running through the streets. It's carnage, right? But upon seeing this, Ra is like, maybe I went too far. And he feels bad, right? So he tries to stop Hathor. So he hits her up and he's like, yo, Hathor, knock it off. But Hathor is crazy now. She's crazed with bloodlust, and she gets turned into Sekhmet, the vengeful representation of Ra's wrath. And she's like, nah, I'm not coming home. I'm not stopping till the humans are dead. So Ra, he's like, oh god, I gotta find a way to stop Sekhmet here. So he comes up with a scheme. He orders 7,000 jars of beer, and he mixes it with red ochre. And this mixture resembles blood. So then he takes this fake blood and floods the plains of Dendera. And when Sekhmet arrives in the plains of Dendera to continue killing, she sees this field of quote-unquote blood, and she drinks it. But now she's drunk, right? And she just blacks out, she just passes out. And when she wakes up, she's once again the peaceful Hathor, friend of humanity. But now that this rebellion was put down, Ra felt pretty weary of having to rule over an ungrateful humanity. So he hits up Nut, and he's just like, yo, can you carry me to higher heavens? And Nut is like, how? What? How? And then Nun, the water, is just like, no, I can help you out, dog. And turns her into a celestial cow. And Ra hops on her back, and they just fly away, higher and higher from the earth in the affairs of human beings. And on his way up, Ra is just like, yo, check this out. And he creates the field of reeds for humanity in the afterlife. And right as he's leaving, he says, Osiris, you're now in charge. You will rule in my place. And he turns to Thoth and says, and you will rule over the night sky. Getting back on track, Osiris was now god of the universe. So he marries his sister Isis, and he brings prosperity to mankind. He brings civilizations because they previously lived primitively. He also introduces agriculture, weaving, he teaches them how to make bread, and he also created laws. So as you can see, Osiris was a good ruler. It kind of makes you wonder what the hell Ra was doing all this time. Maybe he was incompetent, maybe he should have been overthrown. But regardless, Osiris's brother Seth was jealous, because Seth, his kingdom is in the arid desert, right? So he's really jealous of his brother's prosperous kingdom. This was made even worse when Nephthys, Seth's wife and sister, really started to dig Osiris, also her brother. And at this point, she decided to disguise herself as Isis and, let's just say, mingled with Osiris. And as a result, Anubis was born. Naturally, Seth was livid, right? He was enraged by this betrayal, and he decided to prepare revenge. But he decided to take his revenge against Osiris? And I get being jealous of the dude, but he didn't choose to steal your girl. She did that on her own. Osiris is literally a victim here. But in spite of this, the god of dry lands and the personification of evil, Seth, he invites Osiris to a great feast in his honor. And during this feast, he brings forth this big, beautiful coffin. What a coffin, right? And he says, I'm going to offer it to whoever fits inside perfectly. And Osiris just oh, let me try. And he just gets in the coffin. And I'm like, why does he need a coffin? What's he going to do with it? But regardless, Seth was about to launch his 1 million IQ plan, right? The second Osiris got inside the coffin, Seth, get this, closed the lid. And then he just threw it in a river. And Osiris, god of the universe, drowned. And Seth became king. I guess he was next in line. I mean, this is so... Osiris really got beaten by Seth just opening the door and being like, okay, get in. At the loss of her husband, Isis cried hard. Her tears ended up in the Nile River and is the cause of the regular floods of the Nile. Maybe this is the origin of the god Happy, who's responsible for flooding the Nile? Who knows? At this point, Isis and her sister Nephthys are looking for Osiris's body. And Isis found it, and she tried to hide it. But Seth found it anyway, and he just smashes it into 42 pieces and decides to spread the pieces throughout Egypt so no one will be able to put them back together. But Isis, with Anubis' help, managed to recover all the pieces and put him back together. And Anubis, during the funeral ritual, turned Osiris into the first mummy. And Isis, using her divine powers, managed to resurrect Osiris. But it's revealed that Osiris could not return to the world of the living. So Anubis, who's the god of death and ruler of the underworld, transferred his title to Osiris. So now Osiris would rule over the world of the dead. Now Anubis became the deity that would guide spirits to the underworld and judge them. He would place the heart of the deceased person on a scale, and on the other side of the scale would be a feather. And if the heart was heavier than the feather, it would mean that this heart was filled with wickedness, and then it would be delivered to a demonic monster known as Ahmed, the Heart Devourer. But if the heart was good and passed the test, he would take the person to Osiris, and they would begin life after death in the field of reeds. And with this new status quo, it's revealed that Ra, every single day during his travels, would come visit Osiris to pay his respects. Now, in spite of basically being a zombie, Osiris had a son with Isis, named Horus. And Horus swore he would one day overthrow Seth and take back the throne that should be his by right. So it was then that the falcon god Horus was prophesied to one day rule over the skies and bring back light to Egypt, ending the darkness that was brought by Seth. Now, Horus is a very interesting guy. You see, as a result of being worshipped for millennia, Horus is kinda, his mythos has become confusing. According to the legends, at one point he's simultaneously a child and adult, and he appeared as Hathor's son, husband, and father, all at the same time. So to avoid this problem, we'll be sticking with the most recognizable and commonly accepted version of Horus, alright? Now, when Horus was a child, Isis used to keep 7 scorpions as bodyguards. Weird flex, but okay. And one day, Isis asked a rich woman if she and Horus could stay the night, and the rich woman was like, no. Luckily, a poor woman ended up letting them stay. But the scorpions were like, oh, hell nah, no way they're gonna treat Isis like that. And they were like, we gotta get our lick back. So they broke into the rich woman's house and stung her child with their poison. And like, hey, yo, these scorpions do not play around. But when Isis caught wind of this, she decided to cure the boy, and saying, and I quote, "Why should the child suffer for his mother's foolishness? It's not the child's fault that the mother is rude and arrogant." And like, bro, damn. Upon realizing who Isis was and what she did, the rich woman, in gratitude and forgiveness, offered all of her wealth to Isis and the poor girl who gave Isis shelter. And like, into hindsight, the rich woman kind of had a bad day, right? Her son got poisoned, Isis roasted the hell out of her, and now she's poor. The lesson here, of course, is to be nicer to people who walk around with a pack of scorpions. Another incident when Horus was a child took place when Isis went to search for food. When she returned, she discovered Horus had been stung to death by scorpions. Hey, yo, what do they got against kids? Naturally, Isis screamed in grief and terror. Unnaturally, though, her screams were so loud they were heard by Ra as he rode in his boat across the sky. And out of concern for Isis, he stopped his boat, and the entire earth was plunged into darkness. At this, Thoth, who was traveling with Ra, hopped out the boat and decided to help Isis. He uttered some powerful spells over Horus, but basically, he threatened that the earth would stay dark forever unless Horus came back to life. And at this threat, the poison just retreated from his body. He was like, alright, my bad, bro, I take it back. And Horus woke up. But before Thoth returned to Ra's boat to, continue setting off aside the sky, He charged the people with Horus's care, saying, "Look after him with more than your lives, for Horus holds within him the destiny of the world." Which is such a fire statement for someone who got no-diffed by random scorpions. Moving on, we get to the time the goddess Isis embarked on a mission to discover Ra's secret name. You see, the Egyptians believed that names held power, so much that the gods went by pseudonyms to keep their power safe. But Isis, she wanted to know Ra's true name. Now at this time, Ra was old and feeble. He would nap and drool as he sat upon his throne, right? And Isis saw an opportunity here, and she collected some of that drool and combined it with some earth, and using magic, she turned this mixture into a venomous snake. Now she put the snake loose on the crossroads that Ra would typically walk on, and she just waited. And eventually, Ra showed up at the crossroads, and the snake bit him, right? And Ra's typically immune to such attacks, but since the poison was made from his own, being, his drool, he wasn't immune, and he was in great pain. So he calls his followers, and he's like, "Help, bro, I'm in agony. Somebody gotta have a cure, right?" And everyone was like, "Nah, bro, I'm sorry. Snake venom ain't my specialty, dog. I can't do nothing." And that's when Isis walks in. She walked right in, probably feeling real good about herself, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I can help you, but only if you tell me your true name first." But Ra's not an idiot. He can tell Isis is trying to hit a quick lick right here, and he's like, "No, you're trying to blackmail me." And Isis said, "Oh, that's too bad. I guess you can just suffer then." And she wasn't lying. Bro was in agony. So eventually he's like, "Okay, fine. And he tells Isis his true names. And I know she was like, "See, that wasn't so hard," before she proceeds to cure him. Of course, she then proceeds to tell Horus Ra's true name, because it turns out her plan all along was just to find a way to bolster Horus's power. Eventually the day came where Horus became an adult, and he decided to claim the throne. And it was decided that the contention between him and Seth was going to be judged by the gods, with the court being presided over by Ra himself. And it would be this council who would decide who is worthy enough to sit on the throne. But this council was just kind of like, "Yeah, you two can try to settle it yourselves. We're just kind of here to watch." Because what followed was a series of clashes between Seth and Horus. Now, eventually Seth proposed a challenge. He was like, "Let's both turn into hippos, and the first of us to come up for air will lose." Which is a pretty good plan, right? They then proceed to stay submerged for 3 months. Jesus, they couldn't have picked an animal with a shorter lung capacity? God damn, bro. At this point, it's revealed that Horus had actually concocted a secret plan. His plan was that while they were both hippos, his mother Isis was supposed to take advantage of this weakness to kill Seth. But did she have to wait 3 months to do that? So anyway, the plan starts, and she hurls a copper spear at the hippos. But she hits Horus. Bruh. So she then goes and heals him. And so Isis tries again, and this time she hits Seth. But she feels bad. She feels sympathy for her brother and decides she can't kill him. So she heals him too. And this betrayal enraged Horus so much, he decapitated his own mother. Luckily, Thoth stepped in and saved Isis by replacing her severed head with a cow's head. And I have so many thoughts here. First of all, how is Seth the evil one here, but Horus is the one who's cheating in the contests and decapitating his own mother? And the question still stands. Who came up for air first? The contest was still going after Horus got hit with a spear, but I guess after Seth got hit, they were both like, "You know what? This contest we spent 3 months on is forfeit due to interference." Because after that, Seth and Horus just went back to fighting like normal. They would continue clashing, and the battles would rage for many years. One day, while fighting in the desert, Seth manages to pluck out Horus's eye. And Horus losing his eye is a big deal, because one of his eyes is the sun, and the other is the moon. So as revenge, Horus, while blind, steals one of Seth's testicles. He was just like, "Give me that!" Afterwards, due to the help of Hathor, Horus has his vision restored. So in the end, Horus got his eyes back, but Seth still has one ball. And the fighting continued. Finally, after a total of 80 years of fighting, the courts of gods decided to actually do their job for once and demanded a reconciliation between the two gods. So Seth, pretending to be benevolent, hit him with the old classic, inviting them to dinner, and he invites Horus for a big feast at his palace. But of course, this was an underhanded scheme because Seth was planning to abuse his nephew during the feast and make him unworthy of the throne. So the scene is set. All the gods are sitting at this table eating dinner, and that's when Seth makes his first move. He asks his nephew Horus if he wants to have sex with him.
Hey yo, what the fuck you mean? You gonna do what?
No, did he? What kind of plan is this? And then Horus goes, oh, you wanna go? Let's go right now.
Hey yo!
For those confused, let me explain the, mastermind plan here. If Horus refuses, he'll look like a coward. But if he accepts, there's still danger, because to the Egyptian gods, semen is described as a potent and dangerous substance akin to poison. So Horus accepts the offer. And now, Horus is doing the nasty with his uncle on the dinner table in front of all the guests. And you just know all the other guests are just pretending not to look. Now Seth is being sneaky and aiming for Horus, right? So Horus is fighting for his life right now, just matrix dodging jizz, before finally, quote, catching it in his hands. Ew! Isis notices that Seth is trying to use this opportunity to poison Horus, and so she comes up with a plan of her own, and she collects Horus's, let's just say, mayonnaise, and adds some, let's just say, special dressing to Seth's salad. Because I guess after all this, they just went back to eating dinner, like nothing happened. But, the plan worked. Seth eats the salad, and he's like, hey, yo, this tastes kind of funny. And right as he says that, a giant golden disc appears on Seth's forehead, with the explanation being that he had been impregnated with his rival's seed and gave birth to the disc as a result. And upon seeing this, Thoth just rips the cum disc off his forehead and places it on their own head.
Jesus, Parker, you are a freak.
Bro really said, hey, nice hat, and just snatched it. I don't even know if that was a hat, bro. The thing just grew out of his head. But, now, Seth was humiliated. And as a result, after 80 years, the court finally granted Horus the throne that was his by right. And Horus became god of the universe. His mother Isis was proud. And Seth's fate was to travel the skies with Ra, helping protect him from the serpent Apep. He even defeated it a couple times. But enraged at this turn of events, Seth's scream can sometimes be heard, now and again, as thunder. Afterwards, Horus had 4 kids with the love god Hathor, and it's stated that all pharaohs are descendants of Horus. And so, the story of Egyptian mythology ends, with Ra in the heavens, Horus as pharaoh, and Osiris ruling the underworld. But that is just the summarized story of Egyptian mythology. Obviously, there are tons of other gods as well, including fairly minor ones like the moon god Khonshu, shout out Moon Knight. Khonshu is also the son of Ra, and Mut, who's the mother goddess who just spawned one day. Also, Thoth marries Mut, the goddess of justice, and yet another daughter of Ra, and gave birth to Sesat. I'm now going to show some of the Egyptian family trees in case you're curious. But yeah, that's the story of Egyptian mythology. It's pretty weird, right? But it's also pretty interesting. Be sure to let me know which part was your favorite. For me, it's definitely the fact that the climax of the whole mythology, the final battle resolving a generational war for the title of God of the Universe, is just a regular day in Alabama. Yeah. Well, that's all I got for you today, folks. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.